We're expecting great things. What is it the writer says? Tell the story you know.
I don't know, God writer.
In this video, I am going to take a closer look at the character Herman Mankiewicz from the film Mank, and the ways that he exhibits signs of overconfidence in many parts of his personality. The overconfidence effect is a psychological term which refers to a bias in one's cognition that leads a person to overestimate their own abilities, judgments, beliefs, and past performances. In any form of bias, a person often has difficulty in assimilating evidence that disproves views they already hold about themselves, others, and the world, causing them to search for confirmatory evidence of what they already believe. When a bias like this becomes ingrained over time, it may lead to someone being overconfident. Overconfidence can have many negative side effects, including the belief that one has more control over external circumstances than they actually do, false beliefs about superiority to others, and the inability to be realistically critical of themselves. By a closer examination of the character, I hope to show the ways that overconfidence is pervasive for Mank throughout the film. With this information in mind, let's get into the analysis. At the 5-minute point of the film, Orson Welles is talking to Mank about the amount of time needed to write Citizen Kane, and he informs Mank that he now has 60 days to write instead of 90. Instead of pushing back on Welles and attempting to be more realistic about what he needs to finish, he instead accepts this request without any hesitation. Although those around him think he is in over his head, he does not see a problem with the goals being set, as he's sure that he can write the script he wants in that time frame. In the end, he does finish on time, but with the help of a great amount of booze and taking many liberties along the way. He completed the task, but it's possible that accuracy of information or sensitivity to others may have not been considered due to Mank's overconfidence regarding the time needed to finish. The second way overconfidence earns its title as the mother of all biases is by giving the other decision-making biases teeth. If we were appropriately humble about psychological vulnerabilities, we would be able to protect ourselves from the errors to which human nature makes us prone. Instead, an excessive faith in ourselves and our judgment means that we too often ignore our vulnerability to bias and error. Decades of research on judgment and decision-making have documented these heuristics and the biases they create. They include, but are not limited to, availability, representativeness, anchoring, framing, reference dependence, and egocentrism. At the 13-minute point of the film, Mank is seen gambling for the first time with some of his fellow writers. One of the writers mentions how Mank once bet $5,000 on a wager about how long it would take for a leaf to fall to the ground. We see in these and other scenes in which Mank is betting that he often falls under the illusion of control, a subdivision of overconfidence in which a person thinks that they have more control over outcomes than they actually do. Despite the chance results of these gambling scenarios, Mank seems to believe that chance is actually on his side, despite multiple examples of why it is not so. The scenes of gambling may seem trivial to viewers, but they actually represent a snapshot of the overall way that Mank believes he has control in situations which are out of his grasp. In gambling and in life, he kept believing he had a tighter grip on outcomes than was the case. He often thought that things were in his favor, despite many examples to the contrary. People also exaggerate their abilities to bring about desired outcomes. They readily credit themselves when things go well, but deny responsibility when things go awry. Together, these beliefs give rise to unrealistic optimism. Positive illusions can also lead people to make poor economic decisions or engage in behaviors that are detrimental to their well-being. Gamblers, for example, often exaggerate their ability to control events that are heavily influenced by chance, such as roulette. At the 31-minute point of the film, Mank's manager returns to the home in Victorville to get an update on the writing process. His manager mentions that the narrative structure may be too complex for audiences to understand, and that Mank may need to change things to accommodate viewers of that day and age. Despite his somewhat realistic viewpoint, Mank still seems to be sure about his vision. As the manager is leaving, he says,
Write hard. Aim low.
causing Mank to laugh at him. In the end, it seems that this gamble pays off for Mank, as he writes an Oscar-winning screenplay with the odds stacked against him. Despite the likely possibility of audiences being confused by his writing, Mank pushed on with his risky venture. Mank is someone who is continually taking chances due to his level of confidence. Just as any high roller will recognize, there may be many losses at the table, but there are also times in which the gambles pay off big. At the 51-minute point of the film, Mank goes on a walk with Marion after she left Hearst's party at the mansion. Marion admits that she doesn't know much about politics and that it's hard for her to keep up with some of the conversations at the party, saying that things often go over her head. She seems to be the perfect complement for Mank, as she is more likely to listen and believe everything he says without questioning it. His overconfidence in himself seems to be boosted by being around Marion, as she values what he says and is highly trustful in his opinion. At one point, she asks him if he could see her playing Marie Antoinette in an upcoming film, and he says that he sees her playing another character instead. She ends up listening to his advice, but to her detriment, since the film becomes a success without her on screen. She trusted his opinion, but was led astray by his overconfidence. There is another way, a middle way, between too much and not enough confidence. This Goldilocks zone of confidence is where rational beliefs meet reality. It is fundamentally based on truth and good sense. It is built on beliefs that can be justified by evidence and honest self-examination. It steers between the perilous cliff of overconfidence and the quicksand of underconfidence. It is not always easy to find this narrow path. It takes honest self-reflection, level-headed analysis, and the courage to resist wishful thinking. At the 58-minute point of the film, Mank is talking to Wells on the phone, and Wells asks how the writing process is going. During this conversation, a worker has brought some bottles of alcohol to the room for Mank, and Mank says,
We're about to turn a corner.
Until the breach.
We soon learn that he is able to finish the script in the next 2 weeks by utilizing alcohol as his aid in writing. We come to understand how alcohol serves certain functions for Mank. As for most people, alcohol allows him to release his inhibitions, to not worry about negative outcomes, to not worry about saying or doing things he may regret later. He is overconfident in general, but the booze allows him to kick the confidence into high gear and disregard any mental barriers. It allows him to write whatever comes to his head, just as he often says whatever comes to his head. Alcohol gave him the ability to extinguish fear and have the confidence to follow through with his writing, allowing him to write an extraordinary story. But at the same time, it caused him to embellish on the characters and take chances that proved to be inaccurate, rupturing relationships with friends. As in much of his life, there was an ever-present paradoxical nature in his behaviors. At the 1 hour, 6-minute point of the film, Mank is having a conversation with Irving in his office. They're talking about the upcoming election, and Mank says to Irving,
Meaning, you can make the world swear King Kong is 10 stories tall and Mary Pickford a virgin at 40. Yet you can't convince starving voters that a turncoat socialist is a menace to everything Californians hold dear? You're barely trying.
We then see in the following scenes different forms of propaganda directed against Upton Sinclair, including fake TV and radio spots. We realize at the same time that Mank was the one who provided the basis for these ideas by challenging Irving in the previous scene. Another damaging aspect of his overconfidence is that he believes his words can't do damage to the world around him. He thinks that only others can do wrong, and that he is free of flaws. Although he focuses much of his attention on the faults of others, he is unable to see the faults of his own. He later attempts to have Irving remove the ads and reverse the campaign, proceeding to believe that talking to Marion about it will be sure to have an impact. But even after a desperate plea, Marion says she couldn't go back to say anything because she had already made her grand exit from the studio. Once again, Mank is overestimating his ability to predict and understand his external circumstances. His idea of how things should go makes sense in theory, but it's as far removed from reality as can be. People believe they are more competent, flexible, and intelligent than others, drive better than others, are more caring, adaptive, and fairer than others, are happier and have better interpersonal relationships than others, and are more deserving of good fortune and good health. They also believe their judgments are less distorted by greed, self-aggrandizement, or personal gain, and that their opinions are grounded in facts, but other people's opinions are driven by ideology. The bias even extends to friends, family, loved ones, and fellow group members, and is characteristic of people from a variety of cultures. At the 1 hour, 26-minute point of the film, Mank is at the election party with Mayer and Irving. At one point in the conversation, Mank gets feisty about politics again and says he'll bet that Sinclair will win, despite already admitting to himself that Sinclair doesn't have a chance. He ends up placing a large bet on a long shot proposition, sort of like many other choices in his life. It's almost as if he imagines that by making the bet, he may have some influence on the results, a type of magical realism. Following the party, Mank goes to help his friend who directed the propaganda films. His friend is drunk and depressed and threatening to harm himself. Mank does his best to talk him down and decides to take the bullets from the gun instead of asking for the gun itself. Unfortunately, his friend had more bullets at his disposal and ends up killing himself. Mank was under the illusion that he had things under control, that the choices he was making were the best and only ones he could make. He thought he had covered all the bases, when in fact, he overlooked a crucial piece of evidence that resulted in death. Positive illusions refer to a set of 3 related beliefs that characterize the way people think about themselves, their ability to control environmental events and their future. Instead of being even-handed or balanced between the good and the bad, people are unrealistically positive. They believe that they have many more positive than negative personal qualities. They exaggerate their abilities to bring about desired outcomes, and they are overly optimistic about their futures. At the 1 hour, 41-minute point of the film, Marion has come to see Mank in Victorville, and they speak outside. She tells him that Hearst has been down on his luck lately, and that she doesn't want the screenplay to make things worse for either of them. She says that she loaned money to Hearst, and Mank asks if it was because she sold her jewelry. She retorts that in fact she just sold some of her real estate. Then he asks if Marion is speaking to him because she was sent by Hearst, and she counters that she came of her own volition. She replies,
"That surprises you? You're the most observant man I know."
She makes a statement that is heavy on irony in regards to this situation and others, since Mank may seem very observant, but he is in fact partially blind due to his overwhelming bias of confidence. We are seeing examples of how Mank is prone to jumping to conclusions in many parts of his life. He seems to be inaccurate much of the time, but never stops to contemplate these missteps or to reevaluate his ways of interaction. Similarly, in the previous scene, Mank mentioned to his brother that he thinks he's washed up, and his brother replies that the script is the best thing he's ever written. Mank often has a very certain appraisal of himself and those around him, only these appraisals only fit in with his own mind and not with the objective world. He often ignores contrary evidence and sticks to his own subjective views. At the 1 hour, 52-minute point of the film, Mank is at Hearst Castle and he is as drunk as we have ever seen him. He begins telling what will be the basis for the story for Citizen Kane. right in front of Hearst and Mayer, who will be two of the main characters. He talks about the ways that Hearst rules over everyone around him and attempts to crush the ideals of others, while his sidekick supports everything he does. Despite Mank's certainty of what he is saying, much of it seems to be contrary to evidence we've already seen. Hearst actually seems like someone who has friends, someone who has people that care about him, while also aspiring to improve the world in some fashion. He is much more human than the man Mank presents in his story. Similarly, Mayer seems to be aloof most of the time, and not like someone who has evil intentions, as Mank might believe him to be. As Mank continues talking, people slowly leave the room, partly because Mank is being obnoxious, but also because he is insulting everyone and presuming to know more about them than he actually does. At the end of his monologue, Mank finds out something he didn't expect about Hearst, and that Hearst is...
He pays half your fucking salary. Him, you fucking ingrate. You didn't know that, did you? You want to know why? Because he likes the way you talk. Not the way you write, the way you talk.
Mank is stunned as he has completely misjudged Hearst, not only on this point, but regarding much of his overall character. His overconfidence in his own views and opinions has led to a complete distortion of objective reality. It is exceptionally rare to be well calibrated in one's confidence. It requires that you understand yourself and what you are capable of achieving. It requires that you know your limitations and what opportunities are not worth pursuing. It requires that you act confidently based on what you know, even if it means taking a stand, making a bet, or speaking up for a viewpoint that is unpopular. But it also requires the willingness to consider the possibility that you are wrong, to listen to evidence, and to change your mind. This is a rare combination of courage and intellectual humility, which leads to actively open-minded thinking. It takes just the right amount of confidence. At the 2-hour point of the film, Hearst leads Mank out of the castle and tells him the parable of the organ grinder's monkey, essentially as a way to deliver the truth to Mank. Mank is someone who believes he is in control of many things in his life. His marriage, his drinking, his work life, political situations. But in fact, he has little control over nearly all of them. All of his ideas of control are in fact illusions. He is someone who is often confident in his abilities, confident in his understanding of other people and situations in his life. Unfortunately, someone like Hearst is a person who is more closely tied to reality, while also being someone who actually has control. In many places of life, Mank is a monkey who is deceiving himself. At an earlier point of the film, Mank says to his brother,
One never remembers one's disasters, it's considered gauche.
And maybe that's part of the problem. For many people, reflecting on errors and disasters is what allows us to improve our lives and increase self-knowledge. Understanding mistakes allows us to stop being monkeys who are under illusion and instead become one who gains control of life. When we fail to see the ways that our thoughts and actions may be damaging or inaccurate, when we fail to pick up on feedback from the environment, we fall into traps like the trap of alcohol Mank battled with for his entire life. We can fall into a life which is entirely based on chance and luck, when it could have been based more on acts of our own free will. This concludes this video on the psychology of Mank. Please watch my other videos on other TV and film characters if you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.